Flying with the wheelchair is totally stress-free. Yeah, I'm kidding, but by the end of this video, your next flight will be way easier. Hi there, I'm Spencer, your go-to certified travel agent and resident expert on all things accessible travel. As a quadriplegic wheelchair user myself, me and my clients have navigated the friendly skies with our trusty chairs more times than I can count. And let me tell you, this video will be an adventure worthy of its own travel brochure, complete with tips, tricks, and a few cautionary tales. Today, I'm taking you through the entire process of flying with the Power Wheelchair, from planning your trip to touchdown, with a special feature on my recent flight to Rome, Italy. By the end of this video, you'll have all the insider tips to navigate the airport like a seasoned traveler. Stick around and let's level up your wheelchair flying game. Let's kick things off with the first and arguably most crucial part of flying with the Power Wheelchair: planning. If you're like me and rocking a wheelchair that's taller than some toddlers, you've got some special considerations to keep in mind. Mine clocks in at over 40 inches. So first up, remember that your wheelchair won't be your trusty seat during the flight. It's got to be stored in the cargo hold. This means you'll need to think about chair dimensions and battery type right from the start. In my case, that 40-inch height eliminates some regional planes from the running because unfortunately, not all aircraft are created equal in terms of cargo space. Now, here's a pro tip. Try to ensure your wheelchair can stay upright during the flight. Why, you may ask? Because the last thing you want is your chair taking an unscheduled nap on its side while suitcases and turbulence play bumper cars with it. Trust me, picking flight routes based on aircraft type is the first and maybe most important step in making sure your chair arrives in one piece. So go ahead and channel your inner airplane geek. It'll pay off. Next up on our checklist, non-stop flights. And no, I'm not just being picky. I'm talking about survival here. Layovers are a no-go for me because of the increased risk of health issues and wheelchair damage. So when scoping out flights, I'm laser focused on finding a day with multiple non-stop options. Why? Because when unexpected delays or cancellations strike, having a backup plan is the difference between a smooth trip and a logistical nightmare. I always opt for an early flight with a couple of those later non-stop options as a safety net. But wait, there's more. I also make sure to book flights during the week and within the normal business hours of a durable medical equipment provider at my destination. Here's a pro move. I reach out to one of these companies ahead of time and keep their contact info handy. That way, if my mobility device ends up in a bad mood, I could potentially get a quick fix. After all, wheelchairs are our legs, and finding a loaner that fits like a glove is next to impossible, especially for custom power chairs like mine. To give you a real-world example in just a bit, I'll share my experience with my recent flight from Atlanta to Rome on Delta Airlines. And speaking of early planning, let's not forget about bathrooms. For me, once I'm transferred to my seat, I'm not budging until we land. But don't worry, I've got a personal bathroom alternative that I'll share with you later. Alright, after all the research, you've locked in the perfect destination and booked that flight. Congrats. Now, the next step is reaching out to the airline to communicate your needs. And when I say communicate, I mean it's time to get chatty with customer service. We're using Delta as our shining example here, since that's how I flew to Rome. Sure, you can request wheelchair assistance during the online booking process, but you'll want to double check everything directly with the airline. Fortunately, Delta has a 24-hour accessibility hotline because, let's face it, accessibility issues while globetrotting don't stick to a 9-to-5 schedule. Now, if you're anything like me and can't transfer yourself, your Power Wheelchair will only get you as far as the jet bridge. Now, it's time for the aisle chair, the roller coaster seat of wheelchairs. Tight, secure, and just as likely to leave you breathless. I had to inform Delta that I'd need some muscle to help lift me in and out of the chair and then onto the seat of the plane. Another pro tip, make sure they book you in a seat with a movable armrest. This little detail makes the transfer process much smoother. No need to channel your inner contortionist. Many airlines are willing to make reasonable accommodations, and Delta really came through for me. Given the high level of my disability, they figured I'd appreciate some extra leg room so other passengers could clamber over me with minimal drama. Plus, I got a bit more reclining space, which was a lifesaver since my upper body support isn't exactly top notch. The best part, they gave me and my travel buddies a complimentary upgrade. Just remember, when you're talking to airline agents, be nice, explaining all your needs thoroughly and calmly, and you'll get much further than barking demands. When you're discussing your needs with the airline, be sure to give them the full rundown of your chair's dimensions and any other medical equipment you're bringing along. All of it flies for free, but they need the info in advance to make the right accommodations. For my trips, I pack my shower wheelchair, power wheelchair, Hoyer lift, and an extra bag of medical supplies, because who doesn't enjoy checking in with a mobile medical unit? Oh, and don't forget your standard check bag and carry-on. Speaking of carry-ons, here's a crucial tip. Pack any critical medical supplies and anything that could keep you going for a day or two, along with your medications in their original bottles. I even throw in an extra set of clothes, just in case the luggage decides to take a detour. You want to be self-sufficient with the basics until your bags can catch up with you or until you can find replacements at your destination. Now, let's talk power, specifically the batteries powering your wheelchair and all your other gadgets. It's crucial to know what type of battery is in your chair because not all batteries are invited to the cargo hold party. Only sealed AGM or gel batteries are allowed down there, so if you've got a lithium-ion battery, it's flying first class with you in the cabin. For me, this meant making room in my carry-on for my laptop, drone, and anything else that might get TSA's attention. Speaking of drones, here's a quick detour. If you're bringing one along, be sure the rules and regulations of your destination. You don't want to be the tourist who accidentally gets their drone confiscated for not having the right paperwork. Depending on where you're headed, this might mean getting a drone pilot's license, registering your drone, or even picking up some liability insurance. Because as much fun as it is to capture stunning aerial shots, it's even more fun when you're doing it legally. Before you jet off into the wild blue yonder, it's time to check in with your doctor or specialist and get their 2 cents on how to stay healthy during your trip. As a wheelchair user with limited mobility, my doc wrote me a prescription for compression socks. Why? Because while I might not be living it up in those fancy first-class recliners, I still need to keep the leg swelling at bay during an 11-hour flight. Fun fact, the lower air pressure at cruising altitude can mess with your circulation, no matter who you are. And just like it messes with your circulation, it messes with your taste buds, hence why the airlines dump extra salt and seasoning on their meals. But beware, that extra salt can make the swelling situation worse, so maybe think twice before diving into in-flight cuisine. Hydration is another must. Drinking plenty of water helps with some of the flying-related side effects, but it does mean more frequent bathroom trips. And here's where things get interesting. As a C4 quadriplegic who uses intermittent catheters, I don't get the traditional, hey, it's bathroom time signal. Instead, I start experiencing autonomic dysreflexia, your body's way of time to go. When that happens, it's urgent because it can spike my blood pressure and cause some serious discomfort. Now, since using the airplane restroom is a no-go for me, I make an appointment with my urologist before flying to get a prescription for indwelling Foley catheters. These are lifesavers during flights or when I'm heading to places where accessible restrooms are as rare as a unicorn sighting. While some companies require a prescription, I found a few online vendors where you can snag them without one. The Foley catheter, hooked up to a bag, lets me stay super hydrated without having to make a mad dash to the lavatory. Of course, what works for me might not be perfect for you, so it's key to hash out a game plan with your medical team. If you're a manual wheelchair user, you might be able to maneuver into a semi-accessible bathroom using an onboard aisle chair, though keep in mind those aren't common on short domestic flights. And remember, the flight crew is there to serve drinks, not assist with personal care, so please plan accordingly. Alright, so you've got your flights booked, your accommodation requests in, and your medical needs squared away. Now it's time to think about how to give your wheelchair the best shot at arriving in one piece. Because nothing says vacation ruin quite like a busted chair at baggage claim. If possible, remove any sensitive parts like the joystick or delicate supports. If they're not easily removable, wrap them up with padding or bubble wrap, like you're sending them off on their own little first class trip. For my wheelchair, I got a bit crafty. I slapped some red tape on the brake release lever, added arrows pointing to the securement spots on my chair, and even marked where the main circuit breaker is. Think of it as a treasure map for the baggage handlers, only instead of gold, they're hunting for the right way to secure your ride. On the flight we're focusing on in this video, I was headed to Italy, so I took things a step further. I printed out a clear diagram and instructions in both English and Italian and stuck them right on my chair. Trust me, this move is a lifesaver because you won't always be there to direct the folks handling your chair, and even if you are, there's a good chance they won't speak your language. We'll get into some of the lost in translation mishaps I've had later on, but let's say that diagram is worth its weight in gold. Italian gold nonetheless. In my arsenal of travel essentials alongside the medical supplies and packed accessories, there are two MVPs that I never leave home without. My Adapt SLING for easy transfers and my Cares harness for upper body securement. A few years back, the fantastic folks at All Wheels Up gifted me both of these through one of their campaigns dedicated to making flying with a disability less of an Olympic sport and more of a dignified experience. If you haven't heard of All Wheels Up, do yourself a favor and check them out. Their mission is all about making air travel safer and more dignified for people with disabilities through hardcore research and tireless advocacy. They've been fighting the good fight for accessible air travel, and trust me, their work is starting to pay off. So keep an eye out and you'll be seeing more of their impact soaring through the sky soon. Before you even think of heading to the airport, let's talk about parking, because there's nothing worse than pulling up to find every spot taken and realizing you might miss your flight before you even hit the security line. Every airport is different, but some, like Atlanta, offer accessible shuttles to and from satellite parking lots. Don't take that for granted. You'll want to confirm this beforehand, especially if you don't have someone who can drop your vehicle off for you. Flying is tricky enough for able-bodied folks, so trust me, you've got to be ready for a few curveballs. Take my last trip, for example. Not only were most of the parking spots full, but the accessible shuttle decided to throw a fit with mechanical issues, delaying me an extra 20 minutes. Talk about a nail-biter. While standard advice is to arrive 2 hours before a domestic flight and 3 hours before an international one, if you're a wheelchair user, I'd say tack on at least an extra hour just to be safe. You've got gear to manage, and trust me, the clock moves faster when you've got wheels to worry about. Speaking of gear, if you're traveling with as much stuff as I do, including delicate equipment, you'll want to snap some photos of everything before checking in. Clear, detailed pictures can be your best friend if something gets damaged, making the claims process smoother and faster. Because let's face it, the likelihood of something going wrong is annoyingly high. When it comes to checking in, I'm like a hawk. I visually confirm that every piece of my luggage and equipment has the proper destination tag slapped on it. And because I'm not taking any chances, I throw an air tag on everything. In the unlikely event my stuff decides to go on its own little adventure, I'll at least have a way to track it down and give the airline more to go on than just a prayer. It's also a smart move to stay on top of your flight status while you're at the airport. Last-minute changes are like the plot twist you don't ask for, but they happen. Here's a quick tip. If you got an iPhone, text your flight numbers to yourself. That way, with just a click, you can get real-time updates on delays, gate changes, and even baggage claim numbers. It's like having a mini air traffic control in your pocket. Now, if you're flying out of Atlanta like I was, you're in luck. They've got the plane train, which zips you from terminal to terminal with ease. It's fully accessible, which isn't something you can count on at every airport. But don't get too comfortable. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, you might get directed to an alternative terminal after check-in, just like I was. Keep your eyes peeled and your wheels ready. You've checked your bags and now rolling towards security. Congratulations, you're one step closer to your destination. Personally, I decided I'd rather not have an extended pat-down session as my pre-flight entertainment, so I signed up for global entry with TSA PreCheck. For wheelchair users, security searches can sometimes feel like a one-person show because traditional body scanners and metal detectors are off limits. So investing in a pre-screening program can be a real game changer. Lucky for me, my credit card provider picked up the tab for this little security upgrade. If you're wondering about the cost, it might be worth checking if your credit card offers similar perks. After all, if you're going to be patted down, it's nice to know you've at least got some premium service to soften the experience. When you finally roll up to the gate, it's time to give the airline agent a friendly reminder of all your needs. Think of it as your last pre-flight checklist before you board. Make sure your personal item bag has everything you'll need for the flight, and don't skip that final restroom visit. You might not get another chance on the plane. And while some folks swear by fasting before their flight, I highly recommend steering clear of Taco Bell unless you want a mid-air surprise. Wheelchair users typically board first, so it's crucial to confirm all arrangements before the general boarding crowd descends. I follow all the steps to perfection, yet I still faced a hiccup. I was sent only one person for my wheelchair transfer, which turned what should have been an early boarding into a delay for everyone. We spent an extra 20 minutes on the jet bridge waiting for more help because the sole staff member couldn't manage the transfer solo. Remember, airline employees can't assist with moving passengers themselves. That's usually handled by a third party who might even be a bit reluctant to let family members lend a hand. Before boarding begins, go over the transfer details with your caregivers because once the process starts, it's a whirlwind of activity and mistakes can happen. And don't forget your cushion. While you might not need it for the brief stint in an aisle chair, it's essential for comfort and pressure relief once you're on the plane. At the time of my flight, I tipped the scales at around 225 pounds, so the transfer was a bit of a workout for everyone involved. Thankfully, we managed it without any major mishaps, at least on this particular flight. It's crucial to have the assistants make any necessary adjustments to your seating position before the plane takes off. Trying to get comfy mid-flight with a full cabin of passengers and the plane in motion can turn into a real game of will I fit. Once I was comfortably situated on my cushion, we strapped in with the CARES harness. This nifty device loops through the standard seatbelt and adds an extra strap that wraps around your seat, ensuring you're snug and secure. For added comfort, especially if you're like me with a higher level spinal cord injury, don't forget to bring a neck pillow. It can make a world of difference. Now, let's talk about my least favorite aspect of the flight. The Arctic chill at 40,000 feet with outside temperatures plummeting to a bone-chilling minus 60 degrees. I found myself laying up like an overstuffed burrito, surrounded by blankets. As for the in-flight meal service, there were a few options, but if you have dietary restrictions, make sure to notify the airline in advance so they can accommodate your needs. And if you're new to flying with a disability, maybe opt for a shorter flight than the 10-hour marathon I endured. While I did manage to catch some Z's, the seats aren't exactly designed for luxury unless you're splurging on those lay-flat business class seats. Because, let's be honest, who doesn't dream of a bed in the sky? When we finally touched down in Rome, My Duolingo lesson came in handy for some basic communications. However, I was told my power wheelchair was already waiting at the jet bridge. According to regulations, you're entitled to stay in your airplane seat until your wheelchair is unloaded from cargo. Unfortunately, the language barrier might have led to a little mix-up. After being transferred to the aisle chair, I was wheeled off the plane only to find out that my power wheelchair was still missing in action. Since I didn't expect to be in the aisle chair for more than a few minutes, I hadn't brought my Rojo cushion with me. Without my usual cushioning, I was left with limited upper body strength and a lot of discomfort during the 20 to 30 minutes it took to get my chair. The delay was due to a malfunctioning elevator, which the maintenance crew took their sweet time fixing. If you're traveling with others, have them disembark and check that your chair is already waiting for you. This can save you from sore muscles and pressure sores, making your arrival a bit smoother and less of an unplanned endurance test. After a thorough check, I was relieved to find that my chair had arrived in one piece and was ready to roll. The transfer process was a breeze, and the fantastic staff at Rome Fiumicino Airport whisked me through customs. Talk about skipping the line. One of the coolest features of the airport is their powered chairs for getting people around quickly. An accessibility rep rides on the back, turning your airport journey into a speedy adventure. When we hit baggage claim, we quickly located all of my luggage and medical gear. Thanks to my prearranged accessible transportation and provided flight details, my ride was waiting outside like a loyal airport chauffeur. Next, we'll dive into the hiccups we encountered on our return flight. Meanwhile, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more wheelchair accessible travel tips. And if Europe is on your travel radar, be sure to check out the other content on my channel. As our 12-day Italian adventure came to an end, it was time to head back to the airport. Once we arrived, check-in was a breeze, and the Delta staff in Rome were absolutely stellar. They quickly tagged all of our bags and equipment, and even slapped on fragile stickers like they were protecting priceless art. When one of my checked suitcases tipped the scales a little bit over the limit, Delta generously waived the fee. The gate agents also took pity on us and checked a few of our carry-on bags that had nothing dangerous except perhaps the temptation of Italian snacks. Our return flight was delayed, but Delta came through with some food vouchers, which was a pleasant surprise, even though the delay was just a couple of hours. The original restaurant they had in mind for the vouchers turned out to be a no-go for accessibility, so they found us an alternative. And since we were still in Italy, we got to savor one last delicious Italian meal, because who can resist the final taste of pasta before heading home? After clearing security, we had some time to spare, so we indulged in a leisurely lunch and made a few duty-free purchases. Let's just say I might have gone a bit overboard with the limoncello. My suitcase could have doubled as a small Italian vineyard. When we reached the gate, we once again alerted the agent about our need for transfer assistance. This time we boarded early and everything seemed to be running smoothly until it wasn't. The transfer process hit a snag due to an Italian-English miscommunication, leading one of the staff to let go of a strap prematurely. I ended up giving the seat next to us a rather unexpected headbutt. Thankfully, no serious injuries, just a bruised ego. We didn't capture this on video because in the chaos, my nurse dropped her phone while rushing to help. Talk about a dramatic moment. Despite the turbulence, we managed to catch a bit of sleep on the 13-hour return flight. A tip for future travelers: if you have a little one behind you, it might be wise to keep the volume down on your conversations. We had our share of high decibel moments from an unhappy baby, but thankfully it was short-lived.
Oh no, we're at that point.
I've been on this plane for 11 hours, and I'm ready to get off. Thank you. Landing in Atlanta, things took a bit of a bumpy turn. The hard braking caused me to slide forward in my seat as if I was auditioning for a roller coaster ride. But all things considered, we made it through our journey. and it was a relief to finally be back on solid ground. Our arrival was later than planned due to the delay, but the transfer process went off without a hitch. However, once I reached my power chair, we discovered some damage to the armrest. We flagged this with airport assistants, who then took us to baggage claim. There, we found that one of my medical equipment bags had been seriously ripped. Talk about a rough landing. Whenever you encounter damage to your stuff, it's crucial to file a report with the Complaint Resolution Officer, also known as the CRO, before leaving the airport. Sadly, our CRO was a rookie, and what should have been a quick resolution turned into a 3-hour saga. It was probably the most frustrating part of the trip, but to be fair, Delta's customer service had been stellar until this minor mishap. It wasn't the agent's fault that the process was slow. She was learning on the job, and there was a lot of managerial back and forth. By the time we finally left the airport, it was nearing midnight. That's right, around the time we should have been arriving back home after our 4.5-hour drive from Atlanta to Florida. We were beyond exhausted, but hey, that's the price of a grand European adventure. Despite the hiccup, our overall experience was fantastic, and I'll definitely fly Delta again. A silver lining though, 2 weeks later, Delta reimbursed me for the damaged medical equipment bag, and after a quick phone chat with a representative, the payment was processed on the same day. The wheelchair damage was minor, likely from a bag falling on the joystick, and we managed to fix it with some tools once we got home. Exploring the globe is an adventure everyone should experience, and while traveling with a wheelchair can present its own set of challenges, don't let that discourage you. With a little preparation and a lot of optimism, you can turn travel hurdles into unforgettable memories. If you enjoyed this guide and want more tips on accessible travel, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, happy travels, and I'll see you soon.